The Man and the Mannequin. It was winter in New York, a few days before Christmas. Snow was falling and everything was white. It was the close of day. People were hailing cabs, on the subway, in their cars, in traffic, or walking or pedaling through the snow, all making their way home. High above all this hustle and bustle, on the top floor of a department store, there was a cleaner named Tim. With his mop and bucket, and dressed in his faded navy blue overalls and dirty old boots, he was well into his job, cleaning the floor of the women's clothing department where he worked. It was deathly quiet on the floor, all the customers having gone, the silence broken only by the sound of Tim's mop being plunged in and out of the soapy water. He had almost finished for the night when something across the room caught his eye. "That's funny," he thought. "I thought everyone had gone home." It was a woman, tall, slim, and elegant, and she was sitting and reading a book. She had long, dark hair and was wearing a pretty floral dress and sandals. Tim put his mop back into his bucket. "She's beautiful," he thought. "I have to meet her. I'm in love with her." The first thing Tim thought about was his appearance. He was ashamed of his clothes, and he was ashamed of his job. He went to the nearest mirror and checked himself. He was unshaven, dirty, and tired. "She'll never want me," he thought. "No, she'll never want me. If only I were the manager, I'd be in a suit and tie, and then she'd notice me." He thought about giving up, but he could not live with himself knowing he had not tried. He took a deep breath and prayed that she would treat him kindly. He wiped his sweaty hands on his overalls, and he made his way over to her. He noticed that the woman had not moved since he had first seen her. She must be enjoying that book, he thought. I hate to disturb her. He wrung his hands and watched her. What if she tells me to go away? His mouth was dry, and sweat ran down his forehead. His heart was pounding, and he felt paralyzed. But, in spite of everything, he managed to summon up the courage to break the ice. "Excuse me," he said, gently. She did not reply. She did not even look up. Perhaps she had not heard him. Giving himself the benefit of the doubt, he tried again. "Hi?" Again she did not reply, but continued reading her book, motionless. "She's ignoring me. She's not interested in me at all." He felt stranded and foolish. He wiped his hands on his overalls again and looked at the ground, not knowing what to do. He wanted to vanish into thin air, ashamed and defeated. He turned on his heels and, with a very heavy heart, started to walk away. But suddenly, "Hi!" He turned around. The woman seemed to be looking at him. How beautiful she was! Pale ivory skin, scarlet lips which were slightly parted, perfectly shaped cheekbones, a turned-up nose, smouldering eyes, and an enigmatic stare. "Hi!" he heard her say again. "Hi!" he replied, trying to maintain his composure, though he was trembling all over and his heart was beating so hard that he thought it would burst. "Nice day, isn't it?" he said, for something to say. The woman did not reply. "What are you reading? Can I?" He took up the book and inspected it. "Jane Austen! I love Jane Austen. I've read all of her books. I find them intriguing. Yes, I find them very intriguing." He had surprised himself with the vocabulary he had come up with for the occasion. Love had inspired him, of course, and his confidence grew. "Wait till you get to the end. You'll never guess what happens." The woman still did not reply. Tim placed the book back where he found it. There was silence for a moment. The woman then, it seemed, asked him a question. "Do I read a lot?" "Oh, all the time. Whenever I can. I go to the library a lot, and I have a bookshelf at home with quite a lot of books." What do you do?" He felt terrible when he lied. "You're a designer? That would explain why you're so expensive. So fashionable. You look really nice. Then Tim said something that surprised even himself. Would you like to go out with me? And the least likely of responses came. Oh, you'd love to? The young man could hardly contain his excitement. That's fine. That's great. I'd love to. What about tomorrow at about 7? The woman seemed to nod in assent. All right. See you then. He ran home as fast as he could, but not before passing the men's clothing department where he picked up a suit for the occasion. He arrived at the store the next day dressed in one of the best suits the department store had to offer. He was wearing a new shirt and tie and a new pair of shiny black shoes. He was clean-shaven, his hair was combed, and he was wearing some aftershave, which he thought made him smell very manly. He held one hand behind his back. In it, a red rose for his sweetheart. He made his way over to her. She was waiting for him, in the same position as the day before. She too had dressed up for the occasion. She was wearing a black sequined dress and a string of pearls around her neck. Her hair was swept up in a swirl and she held a black clutch in her hand. She looked stunning. You look amazing. The woman did not reply. Tim thought he heard mocking laughter, but he dismissed it as a figment of his imagination. I brought this for you. He offered her the rose, but she did not seem to want to take it, so he left it on the table in front of her. Would you like a drink? There was silence. Tim started to get nervous. A glass of water? Still, no reply. Tim thought he heard her laughing at him again. Did I do something wrong? He looked into her eyes. I have to tell you something, she seemed to say. Tim sat down and listened to her attentively. And then the truth came. You're married? I didn't know. I'm sorry. No, you don't have to explain. There was silence for a moment that felt like eternity for Tim. Why didn't you tell me? I spent all day. Oh, it doesn't matter. No, don't say sorry. You don't have to be sorry. He rubbed his forehead. So you're married to a rich guy, I suppose. What's his name? Oh, it doesn't matter. I bet he's rich. I bet he buys you bunches of roses. Is he a banker? I'm a cleaner. I clean this place. You probably know that. He heard her mocking laughter again. Are you laughing at me? There was no reply. The laughter got louder. Are you laughing at me? Again, no answer. Tim approached her, grabbed her arm, and shook her. I'm talking to you! In the next moment, Tim realized that he had pulled off her arm. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. He looked at her. She appeared to be angry. He looked at the arm he was holding. It was cold and lifeless. He put it on the table in front of her. I'm sorry. Wanting to comfort her, he reached out to touch her face. He heard her laughing at him again. Are you laughing at me? The laughter became louder. Don't laugh at me, he yelled, pulling her hair, which came off in an instant and was left dangling in his hand. The woman seemed to laugh even louder. Stop! He screamed. The woman stared at him. She was as beautiful as ever, but she seemed more distant now. Tim wanted to kiss her despite his anger. He placed his hands gently on her face and looked into her eyes. She stared back vacantly at him. He drew her towards him, closed his eyes, and kissed her lips. When he opened his eyes again, he realized he was holding her head in his hands. Horrified, he let it fall to the ground. The pain he felt in his heart was overwhelming and he began to cry. Tears gave way to sobs, which soon became heart-wrenching groans. He fell to the ground in a heap and wept uncontrollably. And there he stayed all night, crying for the love he never had. It must have been quite strange for the manager of the store early the next morning when he opened up for business to find the cleaner of the women's clothing department in a new suit and tie, curled up on the floor, holding the head of a mannequin close to his heart.